Hank Williams for so long, I couldn't believe they'd worked the same place that I had, or that I was working the same place they were.
For life and that sort of thing, I'm very content. I like the kind of person that I am, so I can afford to piddle around and diddle around with me.
Sometimes the loudest stories arrive as barely a whisper. We're trained to trust posters and headlines, yet behind them are real people who paid a price for success. Today is a countdown of 15 moments where truth and legend are so tightly woven you can hardly tell them apart. This isn't a trial, and it isn't an apology tour. It's an attempt to hear voices from the inside. In some places, you'll catch rare admissions, in others only careful versions, the kind people say in hushed tones. Each stop in this list invites you to see familiar names with new eyes. Her records sounded like confessions because the heart behind them had weathered real storms. There were swift unions, partings, and whispers about fleeting attachments. On the surface, it looked like a carousel of headlines, but the point is how private life turned into material for song. Her choices were never about a perfect picture, they were about keeping a heartbeat going. Where others hid, she stepped forward and turned ache into melody. That honesty drew people in, even when it burned. Next comes a story about strength that walks through loss and keeps returning to the light. Her path was a kaleidoscope of unions, short marriages, bright romances, and attempts to balance the stage with a front porch. She was respected for the instrument in her throat and for the strength to stand up after a fall. There were rumors here and quiet admissions there about the difficulty of carrying touring life and intimacy in the same hands. The key is that she refused to live as a permanent victim of circumstance. In one calm interview, she said maturity is the right to choose silence when the world demands fireworks. The next chapter proves silence can be thunderous. Her personal life became headline fuel more than once. She spoke openly about hard seasons and relationships she had to leave in the past. The echo in her music was a plain-spoken tone, no ornaments, a directness that disarms. At times, she seemed surprised by her own endurance, as if every step forward asked whether there was breath left. That honesty can split an audience, yet it is the very thing that builds trust. Next comes a legend who protects the private so carefully that the public heat never quite reaches her. For decades, she has shielded the personal from the public. People know far less about her marriage than her music, and that's by design. When versions of stories made the rounds, she answered with work and a generous laugh. On camera, there's sparkle. Off camera, there's discipline and a quiet, consistent spine. It's one of those rare cases where clickbait on the edge crumbles against the wall of dignity. Dolly proved that charisma isn't just the shine of a spotlight, it's also the right to draw a line. Next, a life that turned a hurricane into a quiet shore. Her romantic chapters once fed daily commentary. Over time, the noise settled, and the emphasis shifted from debate to living. Small decisions and private routine pushed scandal off the stage. For an artist, silence is its own kind of courage. She didn't rush to rebut every guess. She moved toward steadiness. There's a lesson here about choosing your route over anyone else's version. Now, we turn to a marriage that held both a great love and a hard test. Her songs were straight talk, sometimes as sharp as a bare-handed truth. Her long union contained tenderness, conflict, and a cloud of rumors about feelings wandering, which she did not confirm. Through those years, the music cut deeper, perhaps because each line had to cross a real decision. Loretta lived through the storm on stage and at home, learning to speak about the complicated without throwing stones. The next story walks through betrayal and still manages to build a road back to strength. Her creative partnership and marriage looked inseparable until a crack ran the full height of the wall. The fall struck not only her feelings, but also her voice and confidence. Then the unexpected turn. Someone nearby understood pain at the same depth. Friendship first, then love, and a return to her own timbre. This is how you gather yourself without vengeance, granting life the right to open a new chapter. Coming up is a woman for whom home and work were knotted together for a long time, and who learned to loosen that knot without cutting it. She rose with the business, built a brand, juggled family roles and executive calls, From the outside, she looked like a single block of granite. Inside was a map of hard compromises. When a long union ended, she spoke plainly about the grief of it. Yet the line of life kept moving. New projects, a different pace, fresh anchors. Reba reminded us that strength is not about never falling. It's about getting up and still sounding like yourself. Next is a voice that used music to separate a mask from a face. She had to rename herself in spirit to separate the stage from everyone else's expectations. Private decisions ran beside professional ones, difficult partings, quiet alliances, a steady return to roots. In lean years, the work gave her clarity. It often felt as if she was not singing about love in general, but about a single decision to remain honest with herself. The calm center of that choice is her strength. Next comes an artist who learned not to mistake the road home for the road to the stage. Long drives, children, duty. The puzzle of mixing a tour bus with a kitchen table. Some unions looked sturdy until the weight of schedules found their weak planks. Joy turned up too, precisely when no one expected it. She didn't make grand declarations. She kept working and stayed close to those who needed her. In time, she built a version of balance that isn't perfect, but it is true. Coming up is a moment of courage in which a singer said her own name out loud and refused to take it back. For years, she lived inside a compromise with herself, fitting into public expectations that left no room to breathe. She has described the cost of hiding the most important part of her identity just to belong. Choosing to tell the truth was both a personal step and a public risk. In that openness, she found not only criticism, but also a wide arm of support. Then came family, children, new meanings. Her story shows that being yourself does not guarantee an easy road, but it does point the way forward. Next is a flame that never pretends to be anything else. Her romances made news as often as her records, and she never pretended to be comfortable inside someone else's mold. There were brilliant unions, quick breaks, unfinished chapters. She burned bright, and the heat shaped her fiercest tones. At a certain point, she chose freedom over status, the right to leave when the heart was quiet. Her path proves that frankness can be louder than scandal. Now we meet a woman whose private decisions everyone discussed, yet the ending was hers to write. Early love, a loud marriage, a painful divorce, and a new relationship that people tracked step by step. Then a pivot to stillness, an unanticipated happiness where no one thought to look. In conversation, she returns to two words: open talk and mutual respect. Those are simple to pronounce and difficult to keep under stage lights, but they stood the test. Miranda's story is the right to begin again without having to prove anything. Next is a singer for whom friendship quietly drafted the blueprint of the future. Early unions collided with the logistics of a working artist's life. Then a long friendship turned out to be the thing that endured decades. There's a particular beauty in realizing the person beside you has been pacing your horizon the whole time, even when events moved out of step. Their family story sits on respect and shared values. She didn't rush fate, but in the right moment she said yes. This isn't a loud fairy tale. It's a mature decision made by two steady hands. One name remains, the one that avoids noise and gets on with living. Her road to love wasn't straight. Early feelings, short chapters, guesswork from the press. The real turn arrived when she found someone with whom silence felt safe. Distance, engagement, a wedding, and a family that learned to say, "We where once there was only I." They carried losses and bright days without turning them into a performance. That is why this story feels like the most honest one here. Fewer words, more meaning. Sometimes the real twist is recognizing the value of quiet strength. It doesn't shout, but it makes shouting unnecessary. We like simple answers. More often, the answer is a path through doubt, risk, pauses, and returns. These 15 moments resist scandal for scandal's sake and choose craft, choice, and the right to keep boundaries. In some places, you heard rare admissions. In others, we handled versions that still travel as rumor. The aim was the same each time: to hear a living pulse behind the marquee. Which story surprised you the most, and why? If you want more, we'll build another collection, and once again, play close to the edge of intrigue without crossing into accusation.